Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining today's session, Eyes on the Prize, How Eye Tracking Provides a Competitive Edge in the Quest for Consumer Insights. My name is Keith Bartels. I'm the Senior Manager here on the Marketing Research and User Experience team for Tobii North America. Once again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules. I promise today will be a fun and interesting presentation. Let's hop into the agenda. We'll start with an introduction focusing on consumers and the crazy oversaturated messaging world of today. We'll then look at eye tracking. What is it? How does it create value? To really emphasize that value piece, I have a couple of great research examples showcasing eye tracking in action. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So feel free to jot down any questions that might come up through today's presentation, and I'll be sure to answer as many as I can at the end. So in thinking about the world of marketing research and what it is that we do, there's obviously countless ways to describe it, but I like this quote in particular because I think it nicely encapsulates things. So with marketing research, we want to monitor the pulse of customer thoughts and experiences in order to strengthen loyalty and emotional connection to the brand. So simple and straightforward. But there's two pieces of this quote that I want to pull out and focus on in more detail. The first is this idea of monitoring the pulse. And the second is customer thoughts and experiences. And let's look at the customer thoughts and experiences first. What does that look like today? As this image here shows, customer thoughts and experiences today, it is a crazy, complex jungle of constant advertisements and messages and offers coming from all different areas. I mean, think about our always connected lifestyles. We have the smartphones, the tablets, the screens on every device now, advertisements, TV, radio, talking to people, billboards. It does not stop. So it's this constant stream of messaging into the ears and eyes of customers. So it's a lot. And when you think about trying to understand your customers on the researcher end, it's also a lot, because when you think about that idea of monitoring the pulse, it's gone far beyond just a simple survey. So now we have things like crowdsourcing, social media analytics, big data, ethnography, research gamification. The list goes on and on. So if you want to do additional research, there's 20 plus techniques beyond this, and there's always new ones being created. So on the researcher end, it's also quite complex. And I think a nice way to kind of cut through this complex landscape on both sides, the customer and the researcher, what about trying this idea of opening a window into the mind of your customer? And what I'm talking about when I say that is eye tracking. And that's what you're seeing here in this video. So this red dot represents the attention of the customer. And eye tracking is all about the what, the where, and the how long. So what is your customer looking at as they walk into your store, browse your website, or see your call to action? Was it your product or the competitor's product? Or the full environment? What sort of external factors influence that attention? So for example, if I'm a customer and let's just say I'm unboxing a pair of headphones like you see here, what attention went to key branding elements or calls to action, diagrams or important text? What was seen and not seen? Again, a very powerful tool to help you better connect with your customer audience. And to kind of kick off the eye tracking section of this presentation, I want to further go back to that comparison of the traditional approaches, those well-established approaches, and then the window into the mind, or the eye tracking piece. So let's do a comparison with a traditional e-commerce session. And we'll first look at this almost with a shadow technique. So imagine you're watching over the shoulder as this customer browses this Google Play store. So as we can see here, they're doing some scrolling on the main movie section, new movie releases. Eventually some mouse movements before scrolling over to the music section. And I'm leaving this dead air on purpose because we can see certain behaviors through the mouse movements and the scroll, but there's also a lot that we're not seeing. There's a lot of the story that's being missed because they've gone from movies to albums, to top charts, to finally the Moana motion picture soundtrack. Great movie, by the way. The list on the right shows it's pretty slim. We have 4 insights we were able to gather from this shadowing technique, but there's a lot that happened beyond just the cursor and the scroll. So let's take a look at this exact same example. Just this time, let's add the eye tracking piece. So again, that red circle is the attention of the customer. So with eye tracking, we're able to see that they actually looked across that first row of films, focusing more on the title, art, versus the rating or the price. Quick glance at that search bar, they checked out some of the options in that left side menu before going into music. And here, in addition to the scroll, we can also see with the eye tracking, they looked across the first row, the second row, even the start of the third row of CD titles before going into top charts. And here we have some very careful examination of those first 4 or 5 albums before landing on that Moana soundtrack. And just look at the difference with the list on the right compared to the previous slide's list. There's so much more data beyond that initial slides list where it's just a mouse cursor and a scroll. So much of a more detailed story behind their experience. And all these insights can be used to better understand and monitor that pulse. With eye tracking, it's also not just limited to an on-screen e-commerce session like we just looked at. It's able to help with those consumer insights in almost any setting. So if we're talking about in a physical store or a boutique as they shop products, on smart devices, so think smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, with entertainment screens built into the vehicles of today, with streaming platforms, which are some of the most ad and brand rich environments out there with all the different content tiles and cues and calls to action. Eye tracking is such a versatile tool to help you better understand your customer base in almost any setting. And to further build on that value piece, let's look at a couple great use cases and show eye tracking in action. The first 2 examples utilize wearable eye tracking. So it's a set of glasses with the eye tracking technology built in. And for our first example, we have Unilever, and they were using the wearable eye tracking to better understand shopper behavior and experience in kind of a mock store environment. So I have a short video embedded here. It's about 1.5 minutes long. Let's take a look.
In market research, we saw a very big mountain to climb on. What does my product look like on shelf, or what does my product look like in physical? So using eye tracking, it gives you the opportunity to look through the consumer's eyes. So instead of just only listening to an opinion of a consumer, we now see the analysis with heat maps and gaze spot analysis instead of working only with a PowerPoint deck and showing that to an audience. Our experience working with eye tracking is the speed, and we work very close to deadlines. And when we need that specific answer on a question, we use a lot of eye tracking, because eyes don't lie. Combine these things can give you the right insights to adjust your pack or convince your customer. Eye tracking is part of our DNA.
So lots of good quotes there, but one I specifically want to pull out is this one. Our experience working with eye tracking is the speed. We work very close to deadlines, and when we need a specific answer, we use eye tracking because eyes don't lie. And especially that last part of the sentence, because eyes don't lie, I want to talk about for a moment. With some of those traditional approaches, let's say interviews, surveys, or focus groups, sometimes participants have almost an unconscious bias where they might tell the interviewee or interviewer what they think they want to hear to make them happy. But with eye tracking, the eyes don't lie. So it's this great concrete data that you can use to say, my customer looked at my call to action or my brand or the competitor's brand, or they didn't. And they looked for this long and this often. So it's very useful and it's reliable data. Our next example looks at TV advertisements. And when we're talking about anything TV ad related, obviously human attention is paramount. not only for developing the actual ad content, but also making sure you place it in the appropriate spot within the program, because you want to make sure it's the best return for the brands involved. This test we did involved over 3,000 commercials across 7 states in 300 households. And this kind of testing video here shows the overall setup we had participants do. So we instructed them to wear the eye tracking glasses at home as they watch TV, and as naturally as they would, just use devices, check out the programming, just be normal. And I know for a lot of us, this looks pretty familiar. So we have the TV on in the background, we have our smartphone, our tablet, maybe the dog, the work laptop. It's just amazing to see how many different pulls to attention there are in the living room. So many different things are competing for your attention at all times. It kind of goes back to that earlier slide where it showed the big stream of messaging. It's really kind of captured here. So with this test, we were focusing on what works to pull the attention or the eyeballs off of, let's say, this iPad crossword puzzle and up to the TV where an advertisement might be playing. What worked to break through that clutter? Our first finding focused on the actual exposure and attention to the ad itself. And we found that more than half of the ad actually goes unseen. And this is not to say it's the first half or it's the second half. It's just that overall, 60% of the ad from our testing was unwatched. And this is really important because it helps to serve as a reminder that if you do have a brand name, a jingle, a call to action, or some sort of message, maybe don't place it just at the start or just at the end. Weave it throughout the advertisement as much as you can. That way you have the best chance of being on screen during those 5.9 seconds where the customer is actually looking up from their different devices. The next insight we found related to ad placement. So we found that ads placed later in commercial breaks, they received an uptick in attention. And as you can see with this chart on the right, the breaks at the bottom, what I'm referring to are the actual block breaks built into a show. So those 2.5 to 3 minute commercial breaks, that's what we're referencing here, not individual commercials. And as you can see, with break 4 and 5 especially, we have an 8% and a 13% increase in average attention during those later block breaks of the content. And this makes sense when you think about it, because I know for a lot of us, we first start a show, we sit down, we might be finishing dinner, writing a text on our phone, doing a work email, talking to someone in the room. So at first, there's usually a lot going on as the show is starting. But as time passes, you finish up that text, you finish up dinner, and you're more engaged with what's on the screen. So it makes sense that those later block breaks would have a better chance and more attention from the customers. The third insight here is actually a personal favorite of mine because I think it's so interesting. We were looking at the difference between attention with young adults and older generations. And we found from our testing that young adults kept their eyes on screen during commercials for about 5% less than older generations. And why I love this is because it's so different than what we were expecting, and kind of that common mindset of younger generations have. They're always glued to cell phones and devices, and there's a very short attention span. So it's going to be a huge difference in how little they watch commercials or advertisements compared to older generations. From our testing, we found it was much closer, only 5%. And a great example of a way eye tracking can open that window into the mind and help reveal a really interesting insight into human behavior. And I know for myself, I also kind of fall into this category because most of what I watch is on streaming platforms, so I never see commercials. But if I am watching YouTube TV or cable and a commercial comes on, it's almost so different and refreshing that I do pay attention to it because I haven't seen a commercial in so long. So it's a really interesting insight here. In our last case study, use webcam eye tracking. So webcam eye tracking, you can use the built-in webcam on a desktop or a laptop, or as the video on the right shows, even the camera built into an Android or iPhone device. So eye tracking, no hardware required, all using that webcam on the device or computer. For this case study, we focused on user experience and usability of signing up for a couple of different digital streaming platforms. And with the sign up process, we were looking at how HBO Max and Disney Plus, how they communicated a couple key things. So the first is users should know there's great content. They should know there are many ways to watch that great content. And of course, they should be encouraged to sign up now, to join our streaming platform family. The first insight from the eye tracking was around that great content piece, because as we all know, we spend a tremendous amount of time streaming entertainment. So you want to make sure that they carry the movies and the shows and the documentaries that line up with what you enjoy watching. So here we were looking at, how much of these content tiles were people looking at, how much were people looking at the content before making a decision. With Disney Plus, we found that viewers looked at almost twice the content compared to HBO Max. So with Disney Plus, we found about 7.4 movie or show tiles were seen per person, versus HBO Max, it was a bit lower at 4.3. So a nice way to look at some granular data around how much are people looking at the content that we're offering. The next insight was all about the many ways to watch value. So it's not just watching on your TV, it's watching on your smartphone, your tablet, and beyond. With HBO Max, they placed this watch anywhere section lower on the scroll, as you can see on the right here, which also made you look past all these different shows and highlights, but 80% of people did miss that section. Versus Disney Plus, it was much higher up in the scroll, watch the way you want. This was only missed by 17% of the audience. So it's not to say it's a positive or a negative. It's, again, just nice to have that deeper understanding of the story, the granular data behind the performance of your content, your text, based on where you're putting it on the screen. And our last insight is sign up now. So you've checked out the content, it looks fantastic. Wow, you can watch it anywhere on any device. I want to sign up. Let's join this streaming platform. With Disney Plus, we found that they noticed the call to action more than twice as fast compared to HBO Max. So we have this bright blue Get Disney bundle right towards the top on the right there. We found that 95% of customers noticed this in less than 2 seconds. And in fact, over a quarter, it was the very first thing their eyes went to once the page loaded. And that's huge. With HBO Max, they had 2 different sign-up calls to action. So one on the upper right corner and one towards the bottom in the middle, sign up now. Our test revealed it took over 5 seconds for participants to notice these calls to action, which is interesting because they have 2 compared to Disney Plus's 1 sign up now, but it still took twice as long for the customers to notice. Not a positive, not a negative, just an interesting insight to take back to your design team, your decision makers, whoever it might be. So kind of wrapping things up, full circle, connecting the dots. As we've kind of been saying throughout the presentation, the customer mindset, their thoughts, their experiences, it's never been more complex than right now. It's just a constant stream of advertisements and messaging. And because of that, monitoring that pulse, understanding and aligning your brand with your audience, super important. And a great way to take that understanding of your customer to the next level is by opening that window and utilizing eye tracking, because it's a fantastic tool that can move and go with you. It's very versatile. You can better understand your customers in-store, online, in-car, indoors, outdoors, via webcam. So you name it, it's almost a limitless research tool. If you're curious for learning more about Tobii Pro and working with us, we have a great portfolio of eye tracking hardware and software offerings, but also we are much more than just a technology vendor. We actually have our own internal research team. It's called Tobii Pro Insight, and we can be your eye tracking experts and can conduct an entire eye tracking project from start to finish and deliver a customized report that speaks to your individual research goals. So let me know if you want to chat more. Here's my contact information, and thank you all so much again for attending today's presentation. Have a good rest of your day.